This review is for a feature film submitted by Jeanne Pope called The Sea Hut, and I have to say it was rather unexpected film for me to enjoy so much. It is a feature-length documentary, and within this film we witness the uprooting of essentially a family tree, of a family who spent a lot of time in China and was raised in China, and ultimately culminates with her recollecting all these things at this very important sea hut where she goes to reminisce her past. It's 1 hour 23 minutes, and very well researched, very lovingly assembled film, very touching story, very emotional. I think it's difficult for many people to dig into their personal history, uncover certain things, and certainly share it on this public level within a film festival. And I think that was done very wonderfully. I think what we are treated to is not only a really rich family history that spans cultures and countries and many decades. It's a film where we are thrust into the different cultures, and we are really vividly introduced to how people felt in that culture, in that family, and how the feelings developed through partly the aging process, but also the changing country process, which I've been through myself, and many people have. And sometimes it's not quite as easy to explain and to express as it is to feel, and there are many layers to the feeling and to the emotion. What is wonderful is that we are introduced to her and to her family and to various people who crisscross their lives, not only in a spoken way but also in archive footage. There are plenty of photographs and archive film that help us on our journey in understanding this life, spent, at least started in China. And it's a wonderful journey. It's a wonderful expression of a life of a culture, and of the likes and dislikes and confusions and choices that had to be made here and there. And it makes you emotional, and it makes you reflect on your own life and your own experiences while being given this privileged peek into someone else's life. Whenever there's a biographical film, I'm always very keen to hear how a certain experience might have shaped someone up later on in their life. And ultimately this film is all about that, but it's all about that in a very particular way, because the two cultures described, the British and the Chinese culture, are very different. And if you're taken out of one culture which is very different at a very young age, in some cases that can be traumatizing, in some cases that can be very profound and very deep, and who knows how many things that might affect in your more recent life. But that is one of the things that the audience are privileged enough to get a little sneak peek at and have a little guess at, is what might the past have dragged into the future or into the present, and what might have triggered what effect. So that is what we get to learn a lot about in this film, and in that sense it's very wonderful, and it's very personal, it's very slick. There is good use of archive footage. There are some repetitive shots here and there that I've noticed. That is because I have an annoyingly eagle eye for certain things. I wasn't distracted and I wasn't deterred by that, but it was certainly noticeable. Maybe some things were meant that way. Maybe there was something that maybe even I didn't pick out that was intentional with repetition. But I certainly did notice that there was a bit of archive repeated. I felt, ironically, that the biggest thing that confused me about the film was the layers of intricacy. I feel that in order to really get the most out of this film, you need to be immersed into that family, into that era, and ideally you need to know a bit more about Chinese history Chinese politics, to feel the full sense of what the characters are feeling, of what the family's feeling throughout the progress of the film. If you don't know much about Chinese culture, you can still enjoy the film as an overall piece, but there will be things that that might make less sense to you, and that is one of the things, that the intellectual depth that the film reaches is something that it takes a bit of time to digest, and ideally I'd need to watch the film 2 or 3 times to really get the most out of it, and certainly what I think the filmmaker intended for the audience. So it is a really deep and intellectual piece, and profound, and personal. The film is called The Sea Hut. It's a fantastic film, I think it deserves lots of people to watch it, and lots of people to have empathy, especially people who have had a link in their family with China at some point. So thank you very much, Jeanne, for submitting the film. I did really enjoy it, and I hope it gets the exposure that it deserves.